This is ABTV, Animal Bites Television. For animal lovers, by animal lovers.
Well guys, I'm constantly showing you my favorite animals. You see animals like Satan and Sunshine and RJ my gator and Maya my black-tailed Crebo. Today I want to show you the animals I don't showcase nearly enough but still have an awesome special place in my heart. We're going to start with this girl right here. She's an 18-foot tiger het albino reticulated python. And what's so awesome is just recently USARK won the injunction to let us start transporting reticulated pythons and green anacondas back across state lines. So congratulations to Reptile Nation and all the hard work that USARK did. But back to Lucy here. She is just a really cool snake. And reticulated pythons are extremely smart animals. Obviously, they come from Southeast Asia and are the largest snake in the world, with animals getting up over 23 or 24 foot in length. So Lucy here at 18 foot, it's still got some time to grow. And as you can see, she is a handful. She is just a great, beautiful animal. But when we're handling big snakes, we have a policy to try to always make sure that two people are involved in handling, because even though we're professionals, you never really know what's going to happen. But Lucy is just a beautifully tame animal. So today, I'm going to show you my top 10 not so commonly seen snakes here at BHB.
My name is Brian Barczyk. I'm no zoologist, just a guy with a passion for animals. And that passion often takes me on animal adventures around the world.
This week, I'll be showing off my top 10 favorite, not so seen reptiles at BHB. You're watching Snake Bites. When I was 17 years old, I saw my first Macklot's pythons. These guys are just a really unusual python. They're endemic to Indonesia, and I just always fell in love with them. When they're babies, they are just little pistols, and they bite like you can't believe. But as you can see, as they get older, they're completely placid and beautiful snakes. But I tell you what, these guys have an amazing feed response. And I've been on the wrong end of that bite a couple times when they mistaken my hand for a rat, and they squeeze so hard. Now this is an adult male here. It's not gonna get much larger than that at all. But again, when they're hatch out, they're little tiny worms with a big, big attitude. So Macklot's pythons definitely make the list of the top 10 coolest animals I work with. I've always said one of the coolest naturally occurring colubrids would have to be the mandarin rat snakes. Now, ever since I was a kid going into pet shops, I had seen mandarin rat snakes. These guys are endemic to China, and the problem is by the time they get into the country, often coming from the food markets where they're really horribly treated, they get into the country and 99 out of 100 imports end up perishing in a very short period of time. And it's a couple trains of thoughts here. Maybe it's heavily parasitized, but I've also heard the fact that they're mistreated so badly in the food markets that by the time they actually get to us, they sometimes have been void of water for 2 or 3 weeks, and literally all their internal organs start to shut down, which is just horrible to even hear that. But regardless, when I was about 18 years old, I saw the very first captive-born mandarin rat snakes from a guy named Larry Keller, and I had to buy them. They were like 250 bucks, but back then that seemed like a lot of money for me, and I bought a pair of mandarin rat snakes, and I never looked back. I started producing them and adding different bloodlines, and now they're relatively commonly bred in captivity. Now these guys need to be kept quite a bit cooler than most colubrids. You don't want to get them above about 77 or 78 degrees, and they can actually range from sea level to 10,000 feet in the air when it comes to where they're endemic to. They're just a really beautiful and unusual snake, and some localities, believe it or not, don't get very large, maybe 24 inches, and then other ones like the Szechuan variety, like these guys, can sometimes get 4 or 4.5 foot. I tell you, mandarin rat snakes are so cool, and I'm so happy they're being captive bred and are awesome animals now. This is another really cool colubrid snake that you rarely see. What a gorgeous animal. It looks like it's got a little bit of an attitude too. This is what they call a Moellendorffi, or Ornithorhynchus moellendorffi. The common Asian name is 100-flower rat snake. Of course, they named it that because of that beautiful color and pattern, and the fact that it goes from like a red head to greens and browns all the way back to that really cool red tail. Now these guys have some pretty good teeth, and you can see he's got quite a strike range coming up on me. He's coming right for my face. They can literally get up to 8 foot in length. So this one is only about 1.5 years old. They grow a little bit slow, and this one isn't just a normal Moellendorffi. It's actually a hypomelanistic, and there aren't very many of these out there, maybe just a handful of the actual hypos. Now again, just like the mandarin rat snakes, you want to keep these guys a little bit cooler, maybe 77, 78 degrees, but they really like high humidity, typically 75% or higher. They're definitely from northern Vietnam and southern China, and you gotta be careful because this guy, I knew he was keying in right for my face. You're gonna find these guys up in the mountains and in the rocky cave areas, and as babies they hatch out pretty big, but they're typically frog and lizard eaters. Oh, you cheeky monkey you, can you believe this little guy? But they're so cool. They'll have 5 to 8 eggs, and they're really big long eggs, and that's why they hatch out pretty nice size. So the Moellendorffs are definitely such a cool snake. Oh man, take a look at this beauty here. My gosh, it's almost unbelievable to see this color in a snake. The one thing you typically don't see a lot when it comes to snakes is blue. And this happens to be a blue-sided Florida garter snake, or a Thamnophis sirtalis similis. Now these guys are endemic to the Gulf Coast side of Florida, and they're just like any other garter snake really. They're typically either fish, or in the wild they meet frogs as well as worms. But in captivity they do pretty good on rodents, believe it or not. They're really placid animals, and they're live bearers. So this little girl here will hopefully have anywhere from 12 to even the mid to upper 20s as far as live little babies. It's so cool. And the similis, actually, when they hatch out or when they're born, typically they're worm eaters or little fish eaters, whereas some of the other stuff like checkered garter snakes can sometimes easily eat pinkies almost right off the bat, or pinky parts, that is. But I tell you what, that Florida blue garter snake, just that absolutely gorgeous blue color, you're not going to see that very often in a snake, and that's why it's definitely one of my favorites. And I tell you what, even though I'm not supposed to be doing this, I'm going to do it anyway. Just a little bonus for you guys. This happens to be a checkered garter snake, but this is actually like a speckled version. I just had to see it because I saw it through the cage. So this one isn't actually on that top 10 list, but it's probably 10.5 or 11, let's just say it that way. But again, a normal checkered garter snake is going to look a little bit more like this with the pattern. See where it's that checkered boarding pattern, and this of course is that beautiful recessive mutation. So there you go guys, a little bonus garter snake for you. This is a cool animal that kind of has a cool story behind it too, which I think is really cool. This is actually a Japanese rat snake, or an Elaphe climacophora. But what's interesting, of course, is that this is an albino, which doesn't make it all that interesting because we work with a lot of albino snakes. But what's interesting about these guys is that they're endemic to Japan, and there are certain areas over in Japan where this specific snake, the albino Japanese rat snake, is actually worshipped. They think it's some kind of a sacred god of some sorts. So there's actually a few temples where they call the white serpent over there, and it would be the albino climacophora, which is really cool. But I've always liked the Japanese rat snakes in their self. They're just kind of a neat, different type of rat snake. They get relatively large, about 4.5 to 5 foot, and the normal ones can have a really beautiful bluish color to them. But I just absolutely love that yellowy orange look to the albinos. They're going to have anywhere from 6 to 12 eggs, and the eggs are really big. And a lot like a lot of the rat snakes, they hatch out really large and can almost take little fuzzy mice right off the bat. But they have a great personality, and I absolutely love these crazy big eyes on this one. Sand boas have always been kind of one of my favorite snakes, to be totally honest with you. I've been working with them since I was about 16 years old, and there's just something really cool about a little sand boa. Of course, they're Kenyan sand boas I'm talking about, which are endemic to Kenya, which is in East Africa. But years and years ago, an albino Egyptian sand boa came into the country, and it was bred into the Kenyan. So a lot of the snow and albino Kenyans that you're seeing out there actually have some Egyptian sand boa blood in them. But but about 10 years or so ago, a real albino came into the country, which was a paradox albino, which was really cool because it had albinos with black dots on them, and that was a pure Kenyan. But what I want to show you today is actually one of the snows, which is an albino and an aneurystic that still has a little bit of Egyptian blood, but it's not a normal snow. It's actually a splash snow, which is super cool. So the splash gene is just one of those genes that does this white splashing throughout the animal, almost like a little bit of a piebaldism, and they're really cool animals. Now, there's not a lot of splash Kenyans out there yet, but over time I think you're going to see more and more of them, and once we get them into more and more mutations, it's going to be cooler and cooler. The Kenyan sand boas are super cool because they're really easy to keep. As you can see, they're super neat looking, and they're live bearers. I actually had one female drop 36 babies one time, but normally I get anywhere from 12 to 20 babies typically, and the babies come out, you know, relatively small, but they eat pinkies right off the bat. So if you're ever thinking that you want a boa, but you don't want something really big, you know, a female's going to get about 3 foot, a male's going to only stay about 18 inches or so. So there's sexual dimorphism in this species, but they're really a great choice for a cool pet boa. I've literally been keeping boa constrictors since I was 15 years old. There's never been a time in all those years that I haven't had a boa constrictor, but I have a strong affinity towards the sunglows, which are the hypoalbinos. I think they're just absolutely gorgeous. This happens to be my favorite boa though, and it's a sunglow arabesque boa. So again, it's a hypoalbino, but then it also has an arabesque gene. Now the arabesque gene is an interesting one because it's a little bit of a color, but more so it's a pattern mutation, and it was produced by a guy named Steve Hammond down in Ohio in the early 90s, and it was all the rage back then. I think the first arabesque boas that were produced actually sold for somewhere about $15,000 to $20,000 a piece. And one of the characteristics of the arabesque is they kind of have an interesting tail pattern, kind of a reduction of pattern throughout their tail, and then of course they have kind of a lateral, you know, kind of hooking of the saddle, so you have this kind of line that's going down each side. So I just love the arabesque and I love the sunglow stuff. So there you have it, one of my favorite boas. You guys know that I'm nuts about scaleless animals, whether it's silky bearded dragons, scaleless ball pythons, scaleless rat snakes, or scaleless corn snakes. But we've been working with a specific line of scaleless Texas rat snakes that are just really starting to blow my mind. And they're producing these crazy cool scaleless snakes. Just look at the color on that. Again, this is a Texas rat snake. They get about, you know, 5, maybe even sometimes 6 foot long. Sometimes they have a little bit of a cantankerous attitude. But as you can see, these guys are pretty cool. But again, I'm going for that brilliant color. And again, when you strip away that pattern or that scalation, you just get left that brilliant color. And take a look at its sibling right here. This is another one. I absolutely love the contrast. Just look at how beautiful that is. And again, it's that really crisp, like red to black right away. That is one gorgeous snake. So this line is kind of breeding true. It's a polygenic thing. So scaleless is recessive, and this actual line is a polygenic. So we're breeding the coolest color to the coolest color and really getting some amazing thing. And again, I'm gonna go rogue here for a second, guys. I know it's about sticking to the top 10, but you know, I can't do that. There's just so many cool animals. So when I was over here, I was looking, just take a look at this project here. This is actually a coral ghost. So again, it's a polygenic trait. It's a ghost corn snake, which is just an aneurystic hypomelanistic, but that pink that's coming through, that is several generations of breeding the pinkest animals to the pinkest animals. And I had to show it to you guys. I mean, I saw it up there and I thought, there's no way I'm not gonna be able to show this. So again, I know I'm not supposed to be doing it, but that's 12 or 13, whatever. So scaleless rat snakes, they're awesome. And rounding out my list of the top 10 coolest animals that I don't show enough on the show would be the sunset northern blue-tongued skinks. Now, I've been kind of going on for a while now how much I love blue-tongued skinks, but the sunsets are especially beautiful. Now, these are a northern variety, which would be the Telinqua skinkoides intermedia, and they get kind of large, and I just personally love the northerns the best out of all the blue-tongued skinks, but the easterns are really cool as well. Let's face it, they're all really cool, but the sunset ones here are a line bred or a polygenic trait. So way back in the day, Andrew Sakey started breeding northern blue-tongued skinks to the orangest ones he possibly could, then keeping back the coolest babies and continuing the process. And over several generations, this is what he ended up with, the Sunset Northern Blue-tongued Skinks. I tell you what, guys, I could go on forever. It's really hard for me to only say that I've got 10 favorite animals that I don't show you guys enough. I could probably do 100 or 200 of them, but again, I have to keep it to 10. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I have showing you everything. And as always, I was Facebooking and tweeting my way through it along with my buddy here, and you can follow me over at SnakeBitesTV and on Instagram at snakebites.tv. Until next week, you've been watching Snake Bites.
Hi, I'm Peter Birch, an Aussie bloke who loves wildlife. My respect for nature started when I was a young boy in rural New South Wales. Since then, it's exploded into an obsession. New episodes only on Animal Bites TV.